or we are saving for something very specific in a short term. So let's say you want to buy something between 0 to 18 months time, then it's advisable to probably just keep that money in a cash type of account, such as a cash ISA, and just earn interest on it. However, holding cash or excessive cash over the long term is seen as inefficient.
Hello and welcome to the Woke Finance Podcast, the podcast discussing all things finance and finance related. It's your boy Peter. I'm with my co-host, my bro Jax. How are you today?
Yes, Peter, I'm doing very well. As you would definitely know, the UK, we have experienced an absolute heat wave over the past week, a couple of weeks, I would say. And it's been interesting. It's been interesting because whilst I have enjoyed a bit of sun, I would also say it has been awfully a bit too hot sometimes. So yeah, sometimes as they say, be careful what you wish for because you might just get it.
Listen, we're never happy. We're never happy, man, when it comes to this weather. But that's just part of the process, man. But nah, good to hear from you, my bro. And a massive shout out to our listeners wherever you are in the world. We hope that you are staying cool and hydrated if you're in them extremely hot places. Because definitely here in the UK, we don't really know how to, yeah, man, we don't prepare well for it, man. I certainly don't. So but yeah, massive shout out to you all. And yeah, Jax, I guess with a bit of an eye on the UK, there's been some recent news that have taken place where Rachel Reeves, well, there's been news that our ISA allowance, or cash ISA allowance might get cut. And so what we definitely want to do on this episode is just break that down a bit because as I wrongly just said, Jax, I said our ISA allowance, but it's actually a cash ISA allowance. But automatically people might hear certain things. So let's just break this down a bit, Jax. And yeah, let's just explain what's happening here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the slip of the tongue, the mistake that you've just made is actually where some people make raw mistakes, which is essentially not really differentiating between a cash ISA and other ISAs. So to quickly kind of explain what an ISA is or what ISA allowances are here in the UK, I know we have some American listeners, so these will be very similar to things like your Roth IRA and that kind of stuff. Essentially, we have an allowance. We have an allowance called an ISA allowance, and that ISA allowance covers different areas. There are different financial products here in the UK, and each product is under that ISA allowance. So, what I mean by that is you can have a cash ISA, you can have a stocks and shares ISA, you can have a lifetime ISA if you are aged between 18 and 39. You can even have something called an innovative finance ISA as well. So all these four different ISAs I've just mentioned are different products, but they are all from the same family called the ISA, which stands for an individual savings account. Now, when we talk about an ISA allowance, that allowance is at the top level. So even though you will have different ISAs and those specific ISAs themselves may have limits, the absolute limit combined has to be up to £20,000. And that's been the case over the past couple to several years, I would say. For example, the lifetime ISA has an allowance of £4,000. So if you was to use the full lifetime ISA allowance, you then have only £16,000 to spread across the rest. However, aside from the lifetime ISA, the other ISAs don't actually have individual allowances. That's separate from the overall allowance. I will explain what that means. Unlike the lifetime ISA, you can put the whole 20 grand in just a cash ISA if you wanted to, or you could put the whole 20 grand, £20,000 into the stocks and shares ISA, or you could put the whole £20,000 into the innovative finance ISA. So essentially, you can put the whole ISA allowance in any one of these three allowances if you wanted to. Now, the challenge is what you find, and the data shows that here in the UK and probably around the world in terms of using tax allowances, most people use the cash ISA as their preferred type of ISA. A cash ISA is just a savings account that allows you to save money. It's just a savings account, but the interest that you earn on that account is not taxed at all. And that's what ISAs are all about. They are what we call tax wrappers. Anything that you gain that's inside one of these accounts is not subject to capital gains tax, interest, or dividends tax as well. So that's what makes ISAs attractive. And now we're talking about potentially moving the cash ISA to start behaving a bit similarly to the lifetime ISA in the sense that in itself it can have a limit.
Hmm. Um, you mentioned most people, if they do have an ISA, will be in cash ISA. Some stats here, about 16% of the UK adult population only have what we call a stocks and shares ISA. So it's obviously very much less common than a cash ISA. When might having all of your money in a cash ISA all the time, filled it up to 20 grand, all of that stuff, obviously there'll be some pros. What about the other side of things? Why is it that so many people have a cash ISA, and is there opportunities that they might be missing?
It was absolutely because cash is one of the five major asset classes. And when we talk about cash and the role that cash or savings play in our personal finances, we normally use it for emergencies. So we have it as an emergency fund or cash reserve, or we are saving for something very specific in a short term. So let's say you want to buy something between 0 to 18 months time, then it's advisable to probably just keep that money in a cash type of account, such as a cash ISA, and just earn interest on it. However, holding cash or excessive cash over the long term is seen as inefficient because we have something called inflation. Inflation is the general rise in the prices of goods and services in the economy. And so, if there's an inflation rate, which is the rate of the price increases, that's higher than the rate that you're getting from your cash ISA or your savings account, then actually what's happening is your savings are losing real value. So for that reason, we generally don't want to oversave cash predominantly for the long term. That's why ideally we want to park that cash into assets that have a history and a higher probability of generating a return at or above inflation.
Love it, love it, love it. Now we mentioned that Rachel Reeves, for maybe non-UK listeners and even some UK listeners, is our current Chancellor here in the UK, and she has a big say on budgets and all things alike. I guess, Drax, my question is, why on earth we've been used to having this overall ISA allowance, but why on earth we should be thinking about specifically cutting the cash ISA allowance?
So from what I've heard, there's several reasons. So one is quite similar to what I've just described in the sense that she wants to have more people investing their money rather than just saving it in cash. As the statistics that you mentioned, I think only 16% had the stocks and shares ISA, which, if we're honest, is very low and probably showcases the fact that most people are inefficiently investing potentially or just saving too much cash. But the second reason, or probably the reason that is spoken about the most, which I find a bit confusing, is that she wants more people to invest here in UK businesses because we're finding that UK businesses are lacking investment. And we need to find a way to boost the economy here in the UK. We need private capital. We need people to be investing in UK companies. And so I guess in theory, what she's saying is if the allowance of the cash ISA is dropped whilst keeping the allowance of the stocks and shares ISA or the overall ISA limit the same, the more people are likely to start investing in UK companies. And I guess that's the thought process. Whether you believe that's to be true or whether that's going to work, that's another conversation.
That is another conversation, but we're gonna start that now, bro. Will this actually work? That concept of, okay, you're putting less into a cash ISA, but you still need to keep your money in a tax wrapper. So you're gonna put the majority of that money now in investments. And the idea is, you said, want to get people pumping more money back into the UK economy. In It sounds great in fair, it's understandable in theory, but in practice, how is that going to work? Will it work?
So, I mean, if I had to just go off what I know, and of course, I don't really know how she plans to implement it. I remember this is just a rumor, so it could be that she has a bit more information as to how she would want to implement it for it to work. But I,
And Sabo, can I just also say, like, man, and very, very simplistic, natural response. If someone told me that I can't, I've got on, you're cutting my cash allowance and now I've got to invest, I'll probably just put more of that money into what I've been doing. And that doesn't necessarily mean I'm increasing my UK's exposure.
well, this is it. This is the point, which is, in terms of how she will implement it. I mean, yes, absolutely. If it just give me a higher allowance, then why would I change my investment strategy
Hmm.
to invest in UK companies when, let's be honest, most people that are investing or have heard about investing probably nowadays probably get their investing advice from social media,
Hmm.
have been told to just invest in the S&P 500 index. So the S&P 500 is not a UK index. So so yeah, that's probably what most people will do. So my first thought is if my simplistic view as well is what she has suggested or what rumors say she's gonna suggest, then I just don't think it's going to work. And I know we also had the idea of the British ISA, which was to give a £5,000 extra allowance for people to invest in UK companies, British companies, sorry. Then I guess in theory, when I think of it very simplistically, that probably even makes more sense in terms of actually trying to achieve people
Hmm.
investing in UK companies. But of course, we had a conversation about that during a time. Most people can't even fill up their normal allowance, let alone an additional British
Hmm.
British ISA allowance. So yeah, very very long-winded answer, Peter, but I just don't see that being the case. And if most people are like me, or if most people were coming to me, the truth of the matter is, I will probably still be looking at their situation and asking them if they want to keep cash, and cash is something they can invest in according to their risk tolerance. Then there are other financial products that I would tell them to look at rather than UK equities.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see if it does come into play anyway. So I guess hearing all of this, and we've obviously discussed, what a cash ISA is, what are some of the proposals, and potentially how it might affect the everyday individual. What is it that UK investors can do about this? And we're saying UK investors, but things like this happen all over the world. As you said, in America, it might be relevant in terms of their Roth IRA and all of that stuff. But what are some of the things that UK investors can potentially do about this?
Yeah, I think the first thing that someone probably hearing this will think about doing is just pumping as much money as they can into their cash ISA, to take advantage of the allowance before, I believe is July the 15th, where she's predicted to give this make this statement. But I wouldn't say that's probably the most effective way of adapting to what could be a new change. I would say, like I said earlier, the truth of the matter is, even within a stocks and shares ISA, and I know the name could be quite intimidating because you hear stocks and shares, you believe it probably is just investing in companies. The truth of the matter is, the stocks and shares ISA is an ISA that allows you to invest in a whole wide range of different financial assets, including very, very low risk, if basically no risk, let's call it very, very low risk investments such as money market funds, or let's say things like government bonds here in the UK, which are often seen as risk-free assets. So that's something that people can look at if they still want to actually um, keep the money in some sort of cash, low risk investment. Money market funds and government bonds still exist.
Yeah, and interestingly, Jack, there are some investment platforms that let you put cash in stocks and shares as, and if you leave it as cash, you still earn interest.
Yeah, which is
So,
platforms like a platform that I use called Trading 212. They invest your excess cash. From my knowledge, I do believe that's actually what they do. I think they actually invest in money market funds on behalf
mhm.
of the clients that just keep cash in the portfolio. So for some people, they don't need to do it. They just need to put the money into the stocks and shares ISA
Yeah.
and then do nothing, depending on what platform they're using.
Yeah. Anyway, super interesting, and keeping it British, keeping it UK. We're gonna give a shout out to where we're getting listeners from, and Jack's this area is a Waltham Forest.
Oh, Wolf Forest, not too far.
Come on.
Welcome to the Woke Finance podcast. You are here with myself, Jax, and the co-host Peter. And on this podcast, we talk about all things finance and all things finance related. If you want to know more about what we do, because we do serve in a community, you can head over to www.wokefinance.co.uk. That's www.wokefinance.co.uk. And if you want to engage with us on social media, we are on different platforms. We are on Instagram. We are on TikTok and we are also on LinkedIn. If you search for Woke Finance, you will be sure to find us. Welcome to the episode. I hope you are enjoying and gaining tons of value.
Come on, come on, come on. A massive shout out to our listeners over there and all over the world. Now, Jax, as we just wrap up, any other final thoughts in terms of what potentially could be? I mean, I think the news tends to make things bigger than they are, but it could cause a bit of a storm, particularly for those people that may not be prepared and maybe haven't heard discussions like this, Jax. So,
Yeah.
any other thoughts?
Well, what I really think is really important is it's all well and good trying to get more and more people investing, whether that's investing generally, and not just keeping money in cash, or actually getting more and more people to invest in home investments and British type of stocks and shares. That's all well and good, but I think the big problem is actually an educational problem, which is why woke finance is doing what we do in terms of going into young institutions, organizations to teach young people from a very young age about personal finances, including investing. So we introduce them to invest in tax efficiently through things like stocks and shares ISAs. Most people don't get that. We didn't get that growing up. And so I think the bigger problem is actually the problem of education and financial literacy. If more and more people understood what a stocks and shares ISA is and the options available to them, then I believe that there will be a higher chance that more and more people, much more than 16% of the population, would have their funds in stocks and shares ISAs and be investing in companies such as UK companies as well. That's how I see it. And then finally, I'm just not, this is more of an opinion, personal opinion. I'm just not a huge fan of kind of forcing someone's hand. I think ideally it's not really the government's role to tell people how they should invest.
Mm.
The key thing as someone who is a professional in the industry is everybody has their personal risk tolerance. And a lot of that comes from experience. A lot of that comes from their personal attitudes towards money. And I think going back to what I was saying earlier, actually the most important thing is education in this space. If you're able to educate people as to why investing in quality companies, again, the question is, are UK companies quality? Investing in quality companies is actually a better way for you to build long-term wealth than keeping in cash. I think that's a much better route to take than forcing people to remove their money or to stop putting money into a cash ISA and forcing them to go into a stocks and shares ISA.
Hmm. Wow. Deep, 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 deep. Rachel Reeves, are you listening? That was deep. Now, thank you very much, Jax, man. For our listeners, hopefully you got some insight into this new conversation. It's a new, we're responding as you probably might be hearing about it yourself. So, hopefully, Jax, we can track the conversation, track where there's going, because it may mean that it's just pure rumors and nothing actually happens. But if it does, at least we started a conversation and no one's not blindsided because you were listening to the Woke Finance podcast, which is on, all major platforms every Sunday morning. Make sure you stay tuned, keep following us, keep liking us, keep supporting, keep the conversation going. Let this spark a conversation with a friend, with a spouse, with a family member. And yeah, that's definitely a big way of supporting us. And you know the usual way, other ways you can support us. So please do that. Jack, so it's a pleasure until the next time. And everyone, remember all,
Stay
stay woke.